Block Tales is a fun, multiplayer, turn-based RPG on the popular online game platform Roblox. It takes the theme of old OG Roblox and uses it as the main setting of its narrative. The atmosphere is colorful and nostalgic, and the dialogue and characters are charming and likable. Despite many other games on the platform using the style of old Roblox as mindless nostalgia bait or laziness, Block Tales does it exceptionally well, implementing the style in actually meaningful, story-driven ways. Today, I'm going to be focusing on a character in the game that interests me the most, especially after the newest demo dropped. You, the player. The game opens up with you, the player, waking up in a very penguin-themed room, face-to-face with Terry, a penguin NPC that appears around the game and helps with stuff, begrudgingly. He's clearly not happy that you were somehow sleeping in his bed. The player tries to explain that they're from the future, apparently, and that Builder Man had something to do with the kidnapping, or was kidnapped. Terry states that it's 2010, and that the player looks weird and isn't from around here. When walking down and talking to the receptionist, they say that the player has a letter from John Shedlesky, a character based off a former employee from Roblox. Once again, the receptionist states that you must be an important figure from not around here. Going into Roblox HQ, you discover Shedlesky badly damaged after being jumped by Red and Blue. I love those two. He tells you that they kidnapped Builder Man, and that they're after the swords from Sword Fights on the Heights, an old Roblox fighting game where you battle other players on tall floating islands using a variety of different swords. The game is considered a true classic of old Roblox, and in total there are 8 swords that the player can use. The Linked Sword, a basic starter weapon, the Ice Dagger, a small blue sword that can freeze players and insta-kill them, the Venom Shank, a large green sword that poisons players and drains their health, the Ghost Walker, a transparent sword that gives the user ghost-like movement and grows stronger after every kill, the Firebrand, a large flaming sword that completely counters the Ice Dagger, the Wind Force, a sword that deals heavy knockback and sweeps opponents away, the Illumina, a very high damaging sword that highlights invisible players and grants the user a large jump boost. And lastly, the Dark Heart, considered the strongest sword. It steals around 40% of a player's health to the user and has high damage similar to the Illumina. Collecting all of these swords becomes the main focus of the game, and something the player almost becomes obsessed with. Let's skip ahead a bit to the Cruel King. I can make an entire video explaining why he's probably my favorite character in the entire series, but TLDR, he is the king of the Black Rock Kingdom. He has supposedly stolen the Ice Dagger in order to prevent the kingdom's absolute demise. Throughout the game, you'll learn that despite being the main antagonist of Demo 1, he's really not that bad of a guy. All he wants is what's best for his people, and if the player breaking into his castle and kicking the shit out of all of his guards isn't enough, he also states that he's seen the future. He has an idea of what's coming. The Cruel King hears voices, the same voices that the Griefer goes mad over in Demo 2. It's very likely that these voices are the swords themselves, kind of like an Ice King situation. Cruel King believes that he can rewrite the future and prevent complete destruction, which starts with defeating us. Rematching him in Nirvana reveals some more. He once again talks about a sick, twisted future that we're causing. After beating him up a couple more times, he starts to bend, asking us more and more questions about the future. Eventually he concedes, believing in the player's cause and becoming besties. Let's move over to Demo 3. Shedlesky informs the player that the Ghost Walker is able to be obtained in the Spooksville Manor, though with further research, you learn that attempting to grab the sword results in immediate death, unless your soul is pure. The player seems to ignore this rule, and when finally reaching the sword, they impatiently attempt to unsheath it. This ends them up in the mindscape. In it, you find Builder Man, who follows you everywhere and blabbers about escaping and other strange things. If you've beaten the demo already, you know that Greed, Solitude, Fear, and Hatred, who reveals to be posing as Builder Man, are the main 4 bosses that you must get past. There's a lot of theories with these guys, but all of them take into consideration the player and what they feel. We rarely get to see their dialogue, and most of the time it's pretty bland. But the mindscape reveals way more about their psyche. Greed is based on the rush the player feels whenever they obtain a new item or cash from an enemy, or mainly a new sword. This likely influenced the impulsive decision to try snagging the Ghost Walker without much thought. He's taken you for granted. Why doesn't he trust you? Why did he try to take them from you? After all, you did this for him. It's only right that you should keep them. You should keep them. A lot of the NPCs in the Mindscape have interesting dialogue. This specific mannequin likely alludes to Shedletsky, and how in the future he tries to take the 7 swords from you. Though Greed argues that since you fought for them, they deserve to be in your hands. Why can you only hold 10? Why not more? You know it's possible. You just need to take it. The player is aware that their inventory is limited, possibly from you, the one behind the screen. Isolation and solitude is probably from the player's feelings of sadness, with the constant battles and easily discarding enemies, as well as the lack of actual conversation with many NPCs. There's nobody to really genuinely talk to, except for one person, Kyoko, a girl we meet outside the Plainstown airport who enthusiastically talks about her next adventure exploring Teritopolis and the rainforest. You meet her again in the manor, where she expresses worry for the player's safety, as well as their mental health due to the collecting of the swords. It's a nice moment of someone genuinely caring about the player, and I guarantee she'll have a bigger part to play in future demos. Next is Fear, who instead of causing the player fear in its section, it instead plays the role of the fearful, doing everything it can to keep you away and keep you from progressing. This likely represents the player's trauma from everything they've gone through, an underlying sense of dread for the future that they're either trying to prevent or inevitably repeat. Lastly is Hatred, seemingly the strongest emotion in the player's mind. As a mostly silent protagonist, it's hard to see how that could be the case. There's a reason to sympathize with most of the antagonists in the game, right? Except Bigfoot. I fucking hate Bigfoot. The player fights everything they can. Unlike something like Undertale, where you can talk it out with the power of friendship, we immediately resort to violence. In that twisted future everyone dreads, Hatred could have completely taken over the player once they collected every sword, causing complete annihilation. It's the player's true nature, wrath. When defeating Hatred in battle, it does not collapse. Instead, it only becomes tame. It does not truly leave. It's still there. There's a bit of hatred in all of the sword wielders, those voices that they hear and are tormented by. And since we're the ones collecting them all, ours would be the strongest. It's also possible that the player may show hatred towards themselves, maybe for a bad mistake or path they went down. You don't deserve to ride the swing. You are hideous. Wishing the world was back to the way it was. That's what you wanted, wasn't it? You got what you wanted, yet you yearn to go back? Curious. After collecting all of the swords, the player has won. All the power that they yearned for is theirs to keep, yet their greed is not satisfied. They've pushed away everyone trying to help them, and are overcome with loneliness. They fear what comes next, for the world, and for the player. And they hate. They hate themselves, they hate the swords, and they hate you, the one controlling them behind the screen. So with all of this power, they obtain a choice. The choice to go back, to fix everything, and so they take it. I grew up with Roblox. I wasn't a complete OG and didn't play during 2010, but I know how it feels to want to go back to simpler times where everything was the way it was. And I think that's what Block Tales is all about. Missing the past, how the world felt as just a kid having fun. But that's just a theory of Block Tales.